4. The nature of matter and its primordial spirits. It has already been noted above that the purpose of matter cannot be based in its existence. That this is correct can be easily seen by every human being from the continuous new emergence and reappearance of the same matter. The foliage that adorns the tree in one year falls off in autumn, and when spring comes, there is already very little of the fallen foliage to be discovered under the trees, at most a few leaf skeletons, none of which will survive the next autumn in its kind. So it goes with the grass, as also with the fruits of the trees. But not only these vegetal objects, but also minerals, and mainly animals of every species arise and pass away. Mountains, whose tops rose a few millennia ago above the highest cloud regions, are now at least 2/4 lower. For the sharpness of the winds, the triggering power of lightning and ice, have blown away these proud peaks like chaff, and nothing but at most some crumbled boulder still dissolves slowly in a deep trench, and trifling rubble has to put up with being gradually weathered and destroyed by the influences of rain, wind, and electricity in the sandy alpine rifts. All this is a consequence of the changed centre of gravity of matter. There were once oversized beasts out of the earth's body, as well as primeval forests, studded with gigantic trees. Where are these now? Where a mammoth? Where one of the trees that defied a millennium? And where one tree had more wood than now a forest of 100 yokes? Floods came, sank all these deeper into the earth's crust, destroyed thus a whole generation, yes, not only one, but 1,000 generations of trees and animals, and nothing more of all this now carries the earth's surface. From the animals, only fossilized bones are found here and there, and is kept in the art and nature museums built by people until a conflagration, which transforms even the last remains of the centres of gravity and these bone remainders of the gigantic primeval animals left over from the primeval times, into that dusty matter, to whose existence the washerwoman usually makes a perfect end. It is namely the ash as the last exceedingly volatile remains of all matter. As far as the final destruction of those primeval trees is concerned, the remains of which are still frequently found under the name of hard coal, no special explanation is needed. For all the fiery and steaming inventions of this time will have fetched and consumed the last remains from the earth's crust in not too long a time. And so here, the newly invented industry of man performs this last work of destruction by fire and steam on the last remains of those primeval trees. So here the fire still changes the last centre of gravity of this matter. And behold, nothing remains of it but just a little ash again, which, scattered on fields and meadows, is completely dissolved again within a year, at the most, by the action of the rain and the electricity in the air, and thus also such a tree, which once covered over 100 acres of land, has completely lost its material existence in its last remnant. But, some will say, that is also the sad thing, that all existence is heading for a certain destruction. But I say, this is not sad at all. For matter is death, as the flesh is sin through death. Should death and sin remain? I think that it is better to corrupt all matter and all flesh over time, and thereby free the life trapped in death from matter, than to support matter, and in the end to let all free life pass over into the death of matter, which can never be my intention, because I myself, as the eternal, almighty, elementary power and might of all powers and forces, am the most real life, and therefore cannot work for death, but only for life. But since therefore matter exists only as a means for the regulation and liberation of free life, the unchanging existence of matter can never be its purpose. It is, therefore, only there, as long as it must be there, as a means to an end. If any purpose of life has been achieved through it, then it passes away again, as if it had never been there. In general, matter, as you already know, is in itself nothing else than a purposeful appearance of my will fixed by myself. But from this it follows that it can be dissolved again in exactly the same way as it was fixed. This fixation, however, is the main focus in matter, or the animating and sustaining principle. If this is now withdrawn from any material body, then matter is also finished. But so that nevertheless not two sudden emergences and perishings happen before the eyes of mankind, I let this above-mentioned principle of my will never recede so suddenly, and also never seize a point so suddenly, that thereby a thing immediately comes into existence, as on the contrary, perish. Of course, the becoming and decaying of the large world bodies proceeds most slowly in this way. You can already easily understand the reason now. But it is also the case with the earth that the center of gravity, which animates it, is gradually reduced, and so on, until it will finally share the fate of all matter. Now we would know as thoroughly as possible the reason about the change of the center of gravity in matter, as its transitoriness caused by it, and we would also know of what the actual main principle of the center of gravity in matter consists. But I nevertheless see that you would like to see the essence of this principle in a certain way figuratively. Also this shall be shown here. To the material eye, if it were possible, this centre of gravity acting in the body of the earth would appear as a fire, which, in a speed unbelievable for you, would strike through those organs of the earth suitable for it, and thereby cause the necessary reaction for the preservation of the body of the earth in all its parts. But if you could look at this fire with spiritual eyes, you would discover a countless spiritual army, which is held here only by my will, and is driven to defined purposeful activity. These are, therefore, the primordial spirits, banished to the active animation of that matter which surrounds them, through which they themselves finally ascend higher and higher in time, and then, clothed in lighter matter, can pass from stage to stage into perfect, free life. This kind of spirits, which present themselves to the sensual eye as a fire, thus determine the active and the all-matter animating centre of gravity. In the next part, we will explain in detail how the countless secondary centres of gravity of the earth body are driven to useful activity by this centre of gravity through the different layers of the earth body, that is, of its bones, intestines, flesh, and blood.